Hello and welcome to this particular session, which is called hiring. Hiring, as you know, is a function by which organization recruits people to work for itself. Hiring, as simple as it may sound, is one of the most difficult, yet one of the most significant functions within the organization. It's a human resource function, and the importance of hiring can be understood by what Jim Collins wrote in his global best-selling book, Good to Great. He wrote, first who, then what. He gave the analogy of bus, and he said, first decide who to get on the bus before deciding where to drive it to. In very simple words, he meant that organization, before it achieves its purpose or the vision for which it has been created, should first decide who uh, they're going to recruit, who are the people who are going to work for it, and that kind of underlines the importance of hiring. That kind of underlines the importance of uh, people whom we recruit to work for ourselves. Now, hiring, as we said, is a human resource function, and within that function, there are various operations. Now, we are hiring for a job, right? Isn't it? So, the one of the first and foremost operations within the hiring function is to collect as much as possible information about the job, right? So, that process is basically called as job analysis. It's a process for obtaining all pertinent job facts. Uh, Once we have completed job analysis, we kind of start with the hiring process. Now, hiring a function has two main operations. One is the recruitment, and one is the selection. Now, many times hiring is confused with recruitment because recruitment is used as a word interchangeably with hiring, meaning one and the same, which is not. Hiring is the overall function through which an organization recruits people for itself, but within that function there are two main operations, as I said. One is the recruitment and one is the selection. The recruitment is the process of searching prospective employees and stimulating them to apply for the job in the organization, which means it starts with the sourcing, where we start making the announcement that we need the following kinds of people for the following kinds of positions. So basically, it's the announcement with which we start the sourcing process, and it kind of ends with the shortlisting process, where we have already received CVs or profiles from interested individuals, and then we kind of match them with the criteria and shortlist the most suitable ones who will go into the next stage, which is the selection. So that selection basically is the process of picking up the individuals out of those pool of applicants with the requisite qualification and competence for the job. So recruitment ends with creating that pool of applicants who are the most suitable as per their profiles, but then we need to still find out whether they are really fit for the job and who are the ones who are the best fit for the job, and that we achieve through the operation of selection. And in that selection, we kind of administer various kind of selection tests, various kinds of um, um, selection mechanisms like interviews, with which we kind of come to a conclusion that yes, out of the pool, who are the ones who are best suited for this job. So let's look at the recruitment process in a little bit more detail. Now, in recruitment, organization has various objectives with which it does recruitment. One of the first and foremost objective is to determine the present and future requirement in conjunction with personal planning and job analysis activities, which means we have already done the job analysis, where we have tried to understand what the job is all about and what kind of person will be best suited for this job. So we know what the ideal candidate would look like. We also know we have also done personal planning, which means we have kind of assessed that do we have internally already have people available for doing this job. Yes, are we do we have enough of those people, or we have a shortage, and can those shortages be fulfilled by the people that we have already in the organization? If not, then we need to hire them from outside. So we have already done all those assessments, so we have a good idea that how many we need to actually hire, so that our present as well as our future requirements can be met. So that's the one of the first objectives of recruitment. The second objective of recruitment is to increase the pool of candidates at a minimum cost, which means we want to create that pool that we talked about just now at the end of the recruitment process, which means a pool of applicants who are best suitable for this job, from where obviously, or from that pool we are going to select the best suited or the best fit ones. But that pool we want to make as big as possible, but at as less cost as possible, which means we're trying to, why we're trying to increase the size of the pool, because it just gives us more choices, right? We all spoiled for choices. Whenever we go for shopping, we want more choice, right? Whenever we go to a restaurant, we want more choice in the menu, right? Similarly, when we are hiring, we want more choice in terms of candidates. It just gives us a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more room to make good informed choices out of the choices that we have. And that all that should be done at a cost, at a minimum cost. So that's the second objective of recruitment. The third objective of recruitment is to help increase the success rate of selection by reducing the visibly underqualified or overqualified candidates. Now, the fear of in creating that pool could be that we don't do the shortlisting properly, and hence shortlisting becomes one of the very important activities within the recruitment process, so that we can match the candidates with the criteria, not with one another. We don't compare candidates, one candidate with the other candidate, but we compare the candidates with the criteria that we have already determined when we made the announcement for that vacancy. And based on those match, we kind of see the best fit ones. And best fit means that whoever is underqualified is kind of removed from that list, as well as people who are visibly overqualified are also do not make to that list, because overqualified candidates could also be the misfit ones, because they might, even if we recruit them at the end, we might look lucrative. Okay, if we wanted a graduate, we were getting a master's, we wanted masters, but we're getting a PhD. But what will happen eventually is that they will get burnt out in the job faster. They will probably feel undervalued, underappreciated, because they expect more, because of the fact that they are more qualified than what is required for the job. So we kind of do that, and this kind of increases the success rate of selection, because we have created a pool of candidates which best fits the job criteria. Fourth objective is to reduce the probability that job applicants, once recruited and selected, will leave the organization. Now, this is basically a kind of predictive kind of process, where we're trying to predict that, okay, which are the candidates who are more retainable in the future. So maybe that we can make an assessment of that based on their cover letters, based on their backgrounds, and based on what kind of organization we are. And if they're coming with very high expectations, if they've made those expectations enormously clear, and we think that we may not be able to meet those expectations in the near future, we might as well not decide to hire them, because you know uh, they are this possibly would lead to more attrition. They would probably get kind of burnt out faster, and they might leave the organization. So we're also trying to increase the retention value later on through this through the effective recruitment process. Another objective of recruitment is to meet organization legal and social obligations. Now, every organization operates within certain laws in the context that it operates, and that those laws, if they, must be respected, must be upheld when an organization is doing the recruitment, as well as certain social obligations. Like, for instance, organization decides that it wants to increase the local employment, so it might give opportunities to local candidates where its facilities are located, first, of kind of local first. Or it might say that, okay, about 30 to 40% of our jobs will we try to meet through the local candidates, so that we can increase the employment and kind of well-being of the local area where we operate, where we are based in. So similar kind of certain organization legal and social obligations are also met through the process of recruitment. And then once we have kind of created that pool of applicants, we begin identifying and those applicants and preparing them for the for the selection process, so that we provide them enough information how to prepare how the candidate should prepare themselves for the interview or for the selection process, so that they have a fair chance, they come prepared, and they also do not waste their time, they do not waste the organization's time, and we kind of make the most out of the selection process later on. So these are the various objectives of the recruitment activity. Now, having talked about the recruitment activity, let's now focus on the recruitment process itself. How does the process actually look like? Now, in the process, there are five major tasks to be completed. The first is planning, as the number of applicants to be contacted and type of applicants to be contacted. So we kind of make a assessment about how many applicants we need to contact, so that we can meet. Normally, it is more than the number of people that we need to hire. So if we kind of follow a kind of a pyramid kind of recruitment pyramid, so if say roughly if we need to hire about 10 candidates, we might be possibly we might get in touch with about 150 or 200 applicants, because by the time we do the shortlisting and the people whom we invite for the interview, people who actually turn up for the interview or the selection process, and then people who are made offers, and then people who actually accept offers, we might be left with only 10. So if you have to hire 10 people, don't make an error in terms of thinking that we need to contact 10 people, then we'll never have 10 people finally on board. And also the type of applicants to be contacted, that will be kind of made clear with the shortlisting process. We also need to kind of develop our recruitment strategy in terms of first whether we want to make or buy, which means do we want to use our existing employees and train them and prepare them for the role. So if we have, this happens when we have a surplus, if we have a surplus of people and we think that some of these people can be are not required in the jobs that they're doing, but they can be very good candidates for the other open positions that we have. So we might take them out from that particular job and we might retrain them, we might reskill them, and we might be able to place them in those jobs. So that, or do we want to buy, which means do we want to hire from outside? This organization normally takes this step of buying when they think that yes, their present pool of employees is not able to meet that requirement, or they want to bring in some kind of fresh talent within the organization, because they think that that is something which they require, and they don't have those kind of talent or those kind of skills within the organization. So the decision to make or buy, so that's number one. Now, second is the method to be used. How are we going to recruit? Are we going to use technology? And normally these days organizations use a lot of technology, even to the extent that some organizations have completely automated the hiring process. Even the interview is automated. So, to what extent are we going to use this technology? Where to look? Whether we are going to look at in the local market, whether we are going to look at the regional market, or whether we are going to hire from the global market. So that's another decision that organizations have to take. Again, this decision is based on what kind of organizations it is, or it is and what kind of requirement does it have. If it's a organization which is very small in size, so obviously it will look for more local markets. So it might depend on the size of the organization. But if the organization is looking for talent which is not locally available at all, even if they're not very big, they might have to look for talent from the region, or from outside the region. How to look? So how are they going to source candidates? Are they going to contact the placement agencies? Are they going to make the announcement on the portal, or are they going to use the professional social media platforms, or are they going to use the job sites? how are they going to make a announcement on the print media and electronic media? How are they going to source, or how are they going to look? So that's another decision. Again, these are decisions are based on where your candidates are actually located, where your candidates are located. In other words, like for instance, if you're looking for more younger people, they may not be using the newspaper or the television that much as they might be using the professional social media sites. So it is at a decision is based on where your candidates are actually located, what is your budget, how much actually you can afford. So all these decisions kind of play a role in terms of how to look and when to look. What is the timing? When should you start looking? Now, this kind of depends upon when you require them, when an organization requires them. So you might work about 6 months, have a 6 month lead time. So if you require them, say in the month of say June, you might start this process maybe in January, because it might take you some time before you actually have them on board. And then even when you make an offer, organized candidates will have to inform their present organization. They'll have to serve notice periods before they can actually join you. So when to look is an important decision. Third is the searching. How will you activate the source? How will you sell this job to the candidates? How will you make it look attractive? What kind of selling points are you going to use? How are you going to ensure that more candidates apply for this job? And only when more candidates apply for this job, you have a chance to make that pool of applicants at the end of the recruitment process big and rich. Uh, you also have to decide on the screening process, for how are you going to do the screening of the resumes or the CVs that you're going to receive. And as I said, one of the classical mistakes that organizations can make is to compare one candidate with another candidate, which should never be done. Should be in terms of making clear criteria before you even start searching for the candidates. Once you receive the profiles of the candidates, compare the profiles with the criteria and create a point system by which you can allot points to those candidates based on how many criteria they meet, and that should ideally be the screening process. And finally is, how will you evaluate your recruitment process, how well you did what you did, and how will you control that, so that the next time around when you do the recruitment process, you can make it even better, even more efficient, and even more effective. Now, what are the different sources of recruitment? Where do we get the candidates from? Well, we get through advertisements. Those advertisements can be on different media. Generally, these days, social media rules over any other media. But then there are certain job sites which are very popular. To just give you an example, for academic jobs, sites like jobs.ac.uk or some other sites are heavily popular. It could be through employment exchanges. In some countries, it's still relevant. In certain other countries, employment exchanges have become almost irrelevant. You can get candidates through placement agencies. They still play a role, although many of them have actually lost their significance because of the poor kind of candidate experiences, um, and poor candidate reviews. Educational institutions, which means the organization deciding to make campus selections, is still a big source for hiring fresh talent. Employee referrals works in some areas. In some countries or some institutions, they don't prefer referrals. There are different reasons for preferring referrals and not preferring referrals. Referrals are preferred in some organizations because they think that the culture is very unique, and when an employee actually makes a referral, it kind of adds to their sense of pride in terms of becoming like a brand ambassador for the organization. Plus, they bring candidates who are more suitable to that culture. They kind of do that culture education, kind of cultural training to the candidate, implicitly, even before they actually refer them. So their chances of that candidate fitting within the scheme of things is very high. Whereas sometimes referrals are not preferred by certain organizations because they think that their sense of fairness can be compromised, and also kind of it limits organizations' ability to look wider in terms of the best candidate. Labor unions, again, it's very specific to certain organizations where labor unions can also become kind of some kind of source of recruitment. Nepotism is not a positive source, so it still exists in certain countries and certain places where people try to place their friends, families, and relatives within the organization and give them a chance for the job, which is not positive, as I said. It kind of compromises on fairness. One of the fears within the referral process is also nepotism, and leasing is also in vogue, where there are organizations which lease out candidates to companies. So companies don't permanently recruit them but lease them uh, in the for the time for that project is going on. Now this is just a statement which was made sometime quite some time back, but it's still, it's very interesting, is that how Oracle used something like Monster for recruitment. Monster was one of the job sites which was popular at that particular time, and where Oracle very early had made internet the cornerstone of its recruitment strategy, and it said that using internet, it was easily able to process the CVs. Kind of also was in line with Oracle's overall business strategy to drive business via internet. It was cost effective. They could reach out to large number of candidates in wide variety of countries with wide range of skills easily, quickly, and very cost effectively. It was flexible and adaptive. There was ease of communication with the candidates. The speed of recruitment process was very fast, and they had a pan-European presence using online recruitment. But now these days, it's more about social media, which is not just online. Social media being used heavily in the recruitment process. Um, we just discussed about the various sources of recruitment, where to look beyond the obvious when recruiting. So some of the non-conventional or non-traditional recruitment sources. The first one is the boomerangers. The boomerangers are these people who have worked previously for your organization, but maybe left, but they are now interested to return. Should you give them a chance? Well, it depends. Yes, is the obvious answer, because they are coming with now a lot of experience about the market. So they are very good. They have good knowledge about the competitor. They could be of lot of value to your organization. They are also coming with a much kind of balanced set of expectation, because they have already gone and looked outside, and they know that the the grass is not so green as it looks on the other side. The only reason you may not want to recruit them could be in terms of that they may have left for the wrong reasons, which means they might have left in a way that would not have been the most ethical one, or they may have left with a bad reputation. So in that case, probably you will not be so welcoming of these people who want to come back. But otherwise, boomerangers do make good choices, and they are one of the non-traditional sources of recruitment. As I said, it's very important to see why they left in the first place. The second non-traditional source of recruitment is the recent retirees, people who have retired from the job, but they still have a lot of substance left within them. You might like to hire them on contract. You would like to have you make use of their experience. People who have worked in generally in, like for example, they have worked in armies. They may make very good administrators or supply chain specialists, or people who have worked in say industry. Sometimes are once they kind of retire, they kind of have an academic bent, could make very good academics. bringing in the industry experience into the academics, and hence lending a lot of authenticity into educating young minds. Um, so obviously, it's a good source. The only source of caution could be that people who are just looking to just stay active, kind of have some kind of good pastime, um, should not be encouraged to apply, because they are just looking a kind of an engagement, which is not something which you may want. You may want a little bit more than what just a mere engagement for the time. Re-entry workers are another non-traditional source of recruitment, which means these people left the industry for whatever reason. Maybe they lost their job because of recession, or because they took a career break because of planning for the family or caring for the family, and they're now wanting to come back. So we call them the re-entry workers. They are definitely very good source of recruitment. We must encourage them. It's also kind of meeting the organization's social purpose, which we just discussed among the recruitment objective, especially when you give people who have left the industry, like women who have left the industry because they took a career break because they had children, and so it's a kind of resonates a lot with the organization's social purpose. Now, again, with as we said, with all the traditional and non-traditional sources of recruitment, some words of caution is that we don't encourage people who are just coming for a short duration again, right? It's not like a stopgap arrangement. So they are really now coming back for a long haul is something which we would want. So that's another and the another non-traditional source of recruitment is the high school brides. Now, this doesn't mean only the high school graduates, but these are all school and senior school and senior college going, or the college going students who want to earn while they learn. So that's not a bad option for, especially for small businesses who are not able to pay a lot. So they might get these people on hourly basis. It kind of works for them. It kind of works for these students as well, who get a good pocket money and living kind of meet their living kind of expenses through these kind of employments. What's the source of caution for this one is that we verify the backgrounds to avoid embarrassment. So we just need to have a little bit of more check. Maybe we kind of get a letter from their university or from their colleges or from their institutions to verify, yes, if they are really allowed to work, just to make sure that we are not later accused of any kind of unethical kind of recruitment. What are the different factors now, which are governing recruitment? Those factors could be internal or external. Internal factors could be in terms of uh, recruiting policy of the company. What is the overall recruitment policy of the company? That might be a big factor in terms of how we kind of design our recruitment strategy and how we recruit people. Uh, Whether we are doing human resource planning or not. So this is again, human resource planning is an activity where we kind of do a kind of demand and supply analysis. What is the demand that we have of the number and kind of people that we need to work for us, and what kind of supply of those kind of talents do we have from the market. So that whether we do that human resource planning or not is again a factor, because if you have done the human resource planning, that kind of feeds data into this. And if we have not done, then or if we are too small to do a human resource planning, that kind of is also then we do the recruitment accordingly, maybe based on kind of an overall assessment of the scheme of things, because it's not too big to make that kind of statistical kind of or very complicated kind of human resource planning analysis. What is the size of the organization? What kind of costs can we incur? What kind of budgets do we have? What kind of growth stage we are? Because if we are in a growing stage, we kind of looking at growing very fast. We are looking at adding a lot of people, organizations which like startups, which once they enter the growth phase, they kind of grow at a very rapid rate, and at that moment, or during that phase, they recruit a lot number of people. But then once they reach the maturity stage, the recruitment pace slows down and just is used more as replacement of the people who leave the organization. But then organizations which enter the decline phase might be looking at hiring much lesser, and they might actually be looking at more in terms of how we can do the internal adjustment so that we can make the best use of people that we have. So these are some of the internal factors. Then external factors could be in terms of the supply and demand. What kind of, as I said, what kind of demand we have, or what kind of people we need, and what kind of supply is there in the market. So that kind of is also later on is a determinant in terms of how we can source, where we can source, and what's the cost of those employees, right? Many companies, that's why if you see many European companies outsource their manufacturing to countries like China, or in some other Asian countries, because they find cheap labor there, and that kind of reduces their production costs. So sometimes these considerations also might play a role. Unemployment rate of that particular country, because that again shows the kind of availability you have of the talent within that country. What are the labor market conditions? Are we having surplus overall, or are we having shortage? Are we having shortage in just in numbers or in skills? For instance, if you look at certain markets, if we will see that there is an employability issue. It's not that we have less number of candidates. It's just that candidates are not skilled enough to do the job. So what are the labor market conditions? That kind of also decide the kind of brings in a lot of data in terms of what we need to do post hiring these people. So if we see that, yeah, the labor market condition is such that we have number of people, but we don't have the exact number of kind of skills that we need in them, so we might have to really ramp up our training facilities once we have them. Political and legal considerations, of course, many times organizations have to be uh, mindful of what kind of political considerations are there. So there may be politicians or the political institutions within that particular region who might want to uh, organizations to ensure that they are hiring locally so that the local employment is boosted and the local economy is boosted. So might need to keep those things into consideration. Of course, not to go anywhere on the wrong side of law. All the legal aspects in terms of how, what are the worker rights, what are the rights of the people who will come to work with for you are upheld. And of course, the company's image of the company is very important in terms of what kind of image do you have, and you may not like to do anything within the recruitment that kind of undermines that image. Having completed the recruitment process, then once that means the recruitment process ends with creating that large enough pool of candidates who will potentially be the ones who can work for you. But then now we need to determine in from this pool whom are we going to pick up finally, who are the best fits for the job. Now, in the selection process, as we say, again, in very simple words, we say that it's the process of picking the individuals out of the pool of applicants that we have created at the end of the recruitment process with the requisite qualification and competence for the job. So it's just trying to find the best fits for your organization for the job vacancies that you have advertised for. The process of selection, obviously this is kind of the process on the day of the selection. But you got to prepare a lot before this day, and hence you need to first decide what kind of selection tools you're going to use. Are you going to use tests? If you are going to use tests, what kind of tests you are going to use? We're going to get into that a little later. We're going to use interviews. What is the purpose of your interview? Who are the interviewers? What is the interview panel? What are the who are the members of that panel? What are they looking for? Are they knowledgeable enough? Are they aware of what we are looking for? Are they aware of the ethical requirements within the interview setting? So all these things you have to. What kind of questions will be asked during the selection interview? All these aspects need to be prepared before we start the selection. But this is pretty much the selection process on the day of the selection, or the days of the selection, which kind of starts with receiving the candidates, ends with the hiring decision. But let's focus on more important aspects, which is the kind of selection test that we might use. Um, Again, we may not use all of these tests in a single selection. We might use them based on what we actually need, right? So it could be intelligence test, where we are trying to measure a candidate's ability to learn, understand instructions, and make judgments. So we kind of look at aspects, various mental abilities, like their ability, memory, the ability to remember and reproduce information, vocabulary or fluency or numerical ability or perception, etc. So these are various kind of intelligence tests that we might use. Um, this is, again, intelligence tests are very commonly used to where we try to make some kind of assessment of mental abilities of the candidates. It could be also aptitude test. We try to look at some kind of candidates aptitude or the potential to learn certain skills, like the mathematical skills or the mechanical skills or the clerical skills, the managerial skills. So we'll kind of we are not trying to look here about how motivated the candidate is for the job. We are not trying to look for that at this stage in the aptitude test. We're generally trying to look at their flair for things, whether they have that natural flair for those kind of skills which are required in the job. We might also use personality tests to be just to look at the candidate's personality, whether it fits with the requirements of the job, whether they are enough, have that kind of enough motivation, they have that kind of emotional balance, self-confidence, interpersonal behavior, introversion, etc., or extroversion, as it may be required. For instance, just think about cabin crews in an airline. When they if you look at cabin crew members, you will, if you observe them closely, you will see that they have certain traits which are, they have certain personalities which if they don't have, they don't make good cabin crew members. For instance, the sense of politeness, the amount of patience that they have, the amount of perseverance that they have, resilience that they have, the amount of ability to deal or perform under pressure, under stress at times. So all these aspects of personality are very important if you make a good cabin crew. And whenever they don't have those traits, they make very poor cabin crew members. So so we might use in within personality tests, we might use tests like projective tests, where we might give them certain problems or situations to interpret, and through those interpretations we might make more assessment in terms of what kind of personalities that they have. We might also do interest tests, which are kind of, is also a test, kind of a test of personality, where we try to understand whether what kind of interest they show in certain areas of work, which might be very similar to the kind of job that they would be doing if they're hired. We also look at another kind of test, which is preference test. These tests basically compare employee preferences with those of job and organizational requirements. So all these various kind of personality tests are trying to assess whether the candidate's personality is best fit with the kind of requirements that we have in the job or within the organization. We might also use another kind of test, which are called achievement test, which basically measures what the applicant can do on the job currently. So we might if we are hiring an experienced candidate, we might just want to see what they currently do in the jobs that they are doing, and how good they are in doing that. So we might just want to, that might be a very easy way to conclude whether they would do well if we hire them within the organization. We might also use simulation tests. Simulation exercises basically duplicates many of the activities and problems that the employee will face at the work. So we might use technology-based simulation or a physical simulation, and we might create situations very similar to that kind of job, and we try to see whether the candidate really performs well in those simulated kind of situations. And we might also use assessment centers, which basically helps in terms of assessing the potential of the person. We might use certain assessment exercises like basket games or role plays or multiple rater kind of exercises, like the in basket exercises, where we might give many tasks within that set kind of a basket or whatever you call it, and the candidate is supposed to initiate relevant action within a limited period of time. We might use a leaderless group discussion, where there is no leader in the group, but they are supposed to discuss a particular topic and manage within themselves. We might look at, okay, what kind of oral communication tolerance, self-confidence, adaptability skills that they have, how they manage the group discussion. Does it kind of end up in one chaos, or there's somebody within that chaos? Is there somebody trying to make sense of the things? Might use business games. These games generally again are used heavily use simulation and help one or two members to compete, or sometimes teams to compete against each other. For instance, sometimes companies use strategy games where they might use one group of candidates to compete against the other group, and might test a range of skills like their thinking ability, their teamwork, their communication, their sense of strategy, through that particular business game. And or to use individual presentations. So organization many times may ask within the limited time that is available to them to plan, organize, and make a presentation on a particular given topic. This is heavily used in recruitment of research staff or academic staff. Individual presentations are many times used, and like certain organizations may also call it as like micro teach or certain, these are all examples of individual presentations. Graphology test, it's not a very common test which is used in recruitment, but it's a very interesting one, which is basically a test of kind of person's handwriting to assess the person's personality and emotional makeup. Now, this is a little bit debated, so it's not so commonly used, but it has been used in the past by certain organizations. Very sensitive kind of jobs, like when intelligence agencies are hiring, or certain maybe undercover agents are being hired. They might also use lie detection test or the polygraph test to see whether how the candidate responds to a series of questions posed to them to elicit the truth, and what kind of the operator records their respiration rate, blood pressure, perspiration to kind of understand whether they lie under those pressures or they kind of remain truthful. Integrity test is basically a measure employee honesty, and so these are more ethical kind of scenarios which are presented to the potential candidates to see how they respond. Do they bend the rules, or do they try to operate within the rules? Do they take an easier shortcut to do something which kind of compromises the ethics, or they uphold the ethics and choose a more difficult and longer route to achieve the purpose? So these are the various kinds of tests. One of the most commonly used selection tools, obviously, is selection interviews, and there are heavy do's and don'ts of selection interviews. Selection interviews, although commonly used, are many times wrongly used, and if they are not used properly, they can actually lead to incorrect results, which means we hire the wrong candidates. Selection interviews, the do's of the selection interviews is to create a comfortable interview environment, to put the candidates at ease, so that candidates are not, their levels of anxiety and stress are elevated, and they can become more comfortable in terms of facing the selection panel. Prepare a set of questions and objective selection criteria in advance. The, it should not be that the selection panels meets on the day of the interview for the first time. They should have met previously. They should have decided what are they looking for, what kind of questions will they ask, who will ask what kind of questions, so that people don't repeat those questions. The members of the selection panel are very clear what kind of questions they are going to ask, and how are those questions linked with the objective selection criteria. Use of mix of open-ended, close-ended, hypothetical, and behavioral questions. So what kind of questions, as I said, but these questions again, there's some questions could be open-ended questions, some could be close-ended, some could be hypothetical scenarios in which we may ask candidate to respond, some kind of behavioral questions which kind of look at more factual kind of information in terms of how they have behaved in the past. Maintaining eye contact and making interviews feel comfortable, asking about past experiences, challenges, best strengths and weaknesses, providing training to interviewers to avoid inappropriate questions, like any kind of questions which kind of transgress the personal territory of the candidates is an inappropriate question. So if you ask about candidates' personal life, or whether how does their personal life, like for example, if you come to know the candidate is married and you say that, okay, you are newly married, will that limit your ability to work long hours for the job? It's an inappropriate question, because you are trying to make an assumption that just because the candidate is newly married, they will not be enough committed to the job. So keeping a paper trail of every stage of the process, which means keeping a documentary record of the entire selection process. This is very important to not only later on feedback into the process and see how we can improve the process, but also to meet the legal requirements, because in certain areas, it is legally mandatory to keep um, written documentary evidence of the entire process of selection. Um, of course, as a member of the selection panel, you must also use that opportunity to sell that position and your company during the interview to the candidate, so that they kind of, if they have made an offer, they kind of have that data to make a decision whether to accept the offer or not. And of course, allowing time for the candidates to ask questions, not to bombard the candidate with a lot of questions one after the other, right? And giving them time to respond. Some of the don'ts, and again, focusing on the don'ts is equally important, if not more. Um, don't is, asking inappropriate questions. You never should a member of the interview panel ask any inappropriate questions related to gender, age, religion, ethnicity, or personal life. Uh, as a member of the panel, you should never judge the candidate based on their appearance or make assumption about their suitability. This whole notion of there is a lot in first impression is a myth, right? So sometimes candidates might appear very smart, suave, and very smartly dressed, yet might be very poor in terms of their knowledge and skills. And whereas otherwise, sometimes the candidates very good in the knowledge and skills might not be the best dressed ones. So these kind of judgments should be paused during the selection process. Panel members should also stop themselves from interrupting the interview, or distracting them during the interview process. They should not make false promises about job details, salary, or career prospects. This later on creates a lot of problem in terms of candidates when if they are hired, in the their satisfaction level, their engagement level, and their retention level all is impacted if these false promises are made. They should not ignore requests for feedback following an unsuccessful interview. If the candidate, even the candidate is rejected, they have a right to get a proper feedback about how they performed during the interview. Um, um, they sh- the panel members never should start with difficult questions. It's better to start with easier questions to build the rapport, and then go into more difficult or complicated question. They should not ramble or provide unnecessary details when the candidate is responding, and they should not forget to listen. Remember, as a member of the selection panel, your primary task is to listen and not to talk. Let the candidate talk. That's what the candidate is there for. and ideally the candidate should be talking for the 80% of or 85% of the time. Only for the 15% or 20% of the time should the panel members be talking. So it should not be the other way around, that candidate gets a chance only to speak for 15 or 20% of the time, whereas 70 to 80% of the time is being taken by the panel members. That's absolutely a no-no kind of situation. Hiring effectiveness is extremely important, and as I said, hiring effectiveness is determined by how good your recruitment and selection process are, how and that obviously you will know once you've done the process and you feed back into the system. But even before that, we try to determine with certain methods or certain statistical methods, so as to make sure that the hiring effectiveness is high even when we are hiring for the first time, because obviously when we feed back into the system we can improve the hiring process next time around, but we cannot do anything for the process that has happened already. So hence we do certain things even if we are hiring for the first time, so to ensure that our hiring effectiveness is very high. uh, we use these terms like smart hiring and scientific hiring basically to see that how we can make use of uh, certain other sciences into and combining those sciences into the recruitment process to improve the the effectiveness of the hiring. And here we basically use the statistical size or the statistical methods, the learning that we have from the world of mathematics and statistics to improve our hiring effectiveness. uh, so we use aspects like predictive validity. We try to look at that kind of predicting based on the past data in terms of what kind of candidates would be better suited, what kind of candidates will be more retainable, what kind of candidates responses would show that they will later on perform better in the job, kind of selections scores that they get, how can they be correlated with job performance scores later on. All these predictive data can be used to improve the hiring effectiveness. So we use certain standards for selection tests, for instance, reliability, validity, suitability, and standardization. Reliability is the ability of a selection tool to measure and attribute consistently. When a test is administered to the same individuals repeatedly, they should get approximately identical scores, which means if we are trying to measure their ability in terms of how good they are in English language proficiency, we should be measuring that. We should not be measuring their general knowledge, in other words, in very simple words, right? So, second is validity, is the extent to the instrument measures what it intends to measure, right? So, if we are measuring a typist speed and accuracy, that's what we should be end up measuring. Suitability, whether a test is fit the nature of the group when it is applied. Um, so that's why we have so many different kinds of tests, and we should not have over reliance on one particular kind of test. And of course, standardization, which is norms for finalizing the test scores, should be established before we administer those tests, not after we administer those tests. We should decide, okay, what test score is a good test score, what test score, that again we can make kind of judgments based on predictive data, that in the past when a candidate had this particular kind of test score, later on what kind of performance scores that they had, right? So one of the most common reliability measurement is reliability consistency in measurement, which is test retest, which is a coefficient of stability. So if we administer a test to a candidate today and then 10 days later we administer the same test to the same candidate, whether there is a consistency in the scores. Inter-rater reliability, which is basically if say a particular selection test is rated by a rater 1 and then it is rated by a rater 2, do they uh, their scores that rater 1 gives and the rater 2 gives, are they uh, do they have kind of consistency or not? If they have very high variation, which means the rater 1 has scored that very high Rater 2 has scored that candidate very low, then we think that the consistency is low. Internal consistency is coefficient alpha or the alpha value, where we look at whether we really measured well what we set out to measure, whether the question is measuring uh, the per, the what we actually want to measure in that particular test. Validity, on the other hand, is providing evidence to support the adequacy of a measurement and the inferences and actions we take based on the test scores. So we just look at in terms of content validity, whether we are measuring what we are end up measuring. Criterion relation validation, which is whether we are measuring as per the criteria. Concurrent validation, whether we are measuring in terms of the current requirements of the organization. And predictive validation, whether we are measuring in terms of using the predictive data that we have had in the past. So, as I said, content validation, whether or not a test is representative of the construct domain. So, example, if we are using for if we are hiring project managers, whether our test is on project management. Criterion relation validation, whether the test scores are statistically related to some criterion variable. Concurrent validation, which means we are using our current employees to measure a particular test before we apply it on the candidates. And predictive validation is that we have already used selection test in the past, and we have know that what kind of candidates we had, what kind of scores they had, and did they really perform well. So if those predictive data is available, we can use that predictive data in the next round of hiring to improve our hiring process.